Now to a matter of considerable public concern, namely the question of the standard of police driving. Over the past couple of years, we've become accustomed to headlines like these. The figures for the past 2 years, the only ones available, show how big the problem is. In 1987, 24 civilians and 8 police officers were killed, and literally hundreds were seriously injured. Last year the figures were broadly similar, and this year there seems to be very little improvement. So what action should the police take? Tom Boswell takes up the story.
This is no practice chase. The motorist has already been told to stop several times by the West Midlands Police. It's their camera which recorded this pursuit. In this busy urban area, it's the police who must decide whether it's safe to continue the chase.
There's a school down here. Be very, very careful. Right. Yes, it's gone the wrong side of the traffic island. Dias Road. Yeah, carrying on, Dias Road. Yes, we're on to King Standing Road. The wrong side of the dual carriageway in the face of oncoming...
But is their training for these situations enough? And could they be better prepared?
Yeah, Binstead Road, they've abandoned it. Binstead Road.
The Association of Chief Police Officers responding to public concern over police chases issued the Police Driving Report. It made 29 recommendations to improve police driving. Recommendation 10 said the manual, that's roadcraft, should be revised by the National Police Driving Schools Conference.
The system of car control was designed by advisors to the Metropolitan Police in 1934 and has been the core of driver training for the police and other advanced drivers since that date. OK, it was appropriate in 1934 to the driving conditions and the technology of that day, but was no longer appropriate to modern dynamic driving conditions, and that seemed to be what was causing the problem.
Sir John Whitmore, British and European saloon champion of the 60s, maintains that roadcraft and the system taught by the police is not just wrong, it's dangerous.
Roadcraft describes a very rigid system. It's very much a right-wrong. It opens with a system of driving that has to be followed in sequence. And it doesn't allow for the creative initiative that is required to be a good driver. And if you learn by rote to do things in a certain order, it doesn't allow you to have the flexibility that's necessary to be a responsive driver.
One area that he is gravely concerned about is the method taught to hold the steering wheel. Roadcraft states that the hands should be placed in a 10-to-2 position when driving.
It's actually a cumbersome way to steer, and more importantly than that, perhaps, it is a slower way to steer if you're responding to a skid on ice, for example, and you have to respond quickly with steering. It's much better and quicker to keep your hands on the steering wheel fixed in a fixed position.
This theory has recently been supported by work done here in Cambridge. They've proved the 10-to-2 position, with the hands near the top of the wheel, is outdated, inefficient and tiring.
I think people should be encouraged on long drives to use a 25-to-5 position, with part of the weight taken on their thighs, but still leaving plenty of freedom of movement. So that is one criticism. The other one is that if you actually compare driver's control of a vehicle, as I've done in a simulator, allowing people to use a method of moving the hand through the 12 o'clock position and then pulling down on one side of the wheel or on the other side, rather than the 10-to-2 and the push-pull method, then in fact experienced drivers keep a much better course than if they're constrained to the push-pull method.
A skid is the most dangerous situation that police officers can find themselves in. Roadcraft teaches them to eliminate the cause by relaxing the accelerator or brakes. But this isn't always the quickest way of regaining control. This is the declutch method. It's contrary to roadcraft, but now taught by the West Midlands Police, following the methods taught to Scandinavian officers.
It works by taking the drive off the wheels. Whether that car is rear wheel, front wheel or four-wheel driven, the drive is removed, so every car then behaves in the identical manner. If you don't take the drive off, each individual car behaves in a different way when it develops a skid. For the last 2 years, every student through the West Midland Police Driving School has been taught this method on the skid frames. This has led in a reduction by over 30% on our loss of control accidents in the last 2 years.
But it's not just driving techniques that can be improved. What about the mental approach? Superintendent Peter Amy of the Kent Constabulary has looked at the psychological aspects of driving under pressure.
I would make the core of driver training mental approach, mental attitude, to get people to think about what they've just done, to think about what effect it had on other drivers. So I looked at the accidents in my own force and found that roughly 20% of accidents were caused in the what I would call the high stress situation, which is pursuit or going to a call, and that was mainly caused to the driver either exceeding his own capabilities or the capabilities of the vehicle or the road, going too fast in the conditions.
David Brady is one who recognises this. He had chased a car which had caused 2 serious accidents. As he approached and faced the offending driver, he found to his horror that he completely lost his self-control. This in spite of being a very experienced police driver.
I didn't think about the psychological stress. When it was over, I thought, oh God, what have I done? What made me behave like that? And that is when I thought that the job should institute some sort of psychological training or psychological interviewing which would help a bloke who was in my situation. And they don't, and they haven't.
The police must always be in a position to respond. This is the Warwickshire Police filming an 18-year-old driver in a stolen car doing up to 130 miles an hour. There may be disagreements amongst police forces as to how best to improve their training and driving, but as Sir John Whitmore says, they went to the sporting drivers in the 30s, so why don't they return to them now to learn the techniques best suited to modern cars? And they must look too at the mental and psychological pressures of driving if all chases are to be safely concluded, as indeed this one was.
Well, we wait to see what kind of response is forthcoming from the Home Office on what is clearly an important issue. Now, on a somewhat lighter note, back to Sue.